To my good friend, the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Fleischmann.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Dr. Collins, and to all the directors. I just want to say thank you. You all fight the maladies that face so many millions of Americans, and your research and your commitment to medicine and science is incredible. So I thank you very much. As you all know, I have been a very vocal, outspoken advocate with the fight against cancer. Lost both my parents to cancer, my mother when I was very young. And I thank you for all your endeavors in that regard. But one of the particular sad things about cancer is children with cancer. And my question today, and I hope you can help me, a little boy came to see me. He was blind, he had a brain tumor, and he and his dad came to see me and sat with me. I was not even his congressman. I believe he lives in Maryland or Virginia, but I sat with him and I spoke with him about his cancer. So I hope you can help me with this. Pediatric low-grade astrocytoma is a slow-growing children's brain cancer that impacts over 20,000 children every year, and there's over 1,000 new cases apparently diagnosed every year. Existing treatments for PLGA brain cancer are invasive, highly toxic, and so far relatively ineffective. The treatments themselves can cause serious permanent damage and are often life-threatening. What research is being currently conducted by the NIH on PLGA? What treatments and therapeutic alternatives are on the horizon for PLGA patients? And are there any clinical trials currently being conducted by NIH for PLGA? I'd really like to respond back to this little boy.
Well, thank you for the question. Dr. Varmus, who's the director of the NCI, is currently out of the country, or he would be here and I'm sure would be answering your question, but I'll see what I can do. I agree with you. PLGA is one of those pediatric cancers that we desperately need better answers for. That it is slow growing, it doesn't respond particularly well to the kinds of approaches that attack cancers that are growing rapidly and that have made so many advances possible in pediatric cancers of other types. Clearly, there's a connection here between what we were discussing a little bit ago in terms of the cancer focus of the Precision Medicine Initiative. And as part of that, the Cancer Institute aims to enroll something like 1,000 pediatric patients in this earlier stage of trying to understand what drives malignancy. And I would be very surprised if some of those are not, in fact, PLGA patients, to try to understand more about the disease. Obviously, one of the really difficult problems is access to tissue here, because it's not an easy thing to imagine just doing a biopsy of a tumor growing in such a vulnerable place. But there are potential ways that one can begin to look at that actually by looking at DNA that's floating around freely in the blood circulation. We're learning that cancers, because they do turn over, release their DNA. And one can discover it by looking in the circulation for free DNA that's not inside a cell. And in a cancer, that may tell you what's going on without having to do a needle biopsy, this so-called a liquid biopsy. That would be one area of focus. In terms of clinical trials for PLGA, I do not know right off the top of my head what's there. I'm sure if I was looking, I'd go to clinicaltrials.gov and see what's listed. I can certainly get for you, for the record, an indication of what kinds of trials are not only going on, but what might be planned for this terribly difficult condition. And we share your concern about needing better answers for that boy who came to see you.
Thank you, Doctor. I believe I have some additional time, so I'll ask a follow-up question on something else.
Please.
Our country prides itself on being at the forefront of research and development, and biomedical research is no exception. You've expressed some concern about the amount of money going towards international research. Could you please share with us why, with a budget the size of NIH's, you have these concerns, and let us know in an effort to maintain American competitiveness while working to make the largest strides possible to finding cures for the diseases that have the greatest impact on our population. What are you doing to take advantage of the research being done in other countries?
That's a great question. Science is an international effort, and certainly many major programs, including the Human Genome Project that I had the privilege of leading, was international. 6 countries were involved in that, and all the data was made immediately accessible. But it's very clear that the country that leads in biomedical research enjoys other benefits rather directly, especially in terms of commercial spin-offs, and those are wonderful ways to create jobs. America's leadership has led to the fact that we are not only great in academic biomedical research, we also have the most vibrant community of small businesses, biotech companies, and pharmaceutical companies. We would not want to lose that benefit. And yet, when you look at the trajectory that our funding is on compared to other countries, there are deep concerns. We've lost at the NIH about 22% of our purchasing power for biomedical research since 2003, a very substantial downturn in terms of what we can support. And other countries, on the other hand, are going the other way, China in particular, increasing their support of biomedical research by 20% per year over multiple years. The consequences of that, I would refer you to an article by economist Hamilton Moses in JAMA, which was just published about a month ago, has a lot of data in it, pointing out a number of things that are quite alarming if you really care about the U.S. maintaining that leadership, including the fact that China is now filing more patents in biomedicine than the U.S., not just as a proportion of their GDP, but absolutely more patents. And the consequences, I think you can imagine, are going to be significant. The final conclusion of this article, and I think this is a distinguished group that wrote this, is given international trends, the United States will relinquish its historical international lead in biomedical research in the next decade unless certain measures are undertaken. They see the pathway and they don't like what's happening. We can turn this around. What NIH desperately needs, and what would be such an inspirational moment for our community, especially those early stage investigators we were talking about, is a sense of stable trajectory, that we have the chance to be able to plan, to take risks, to do innovative research without the uncertainty about what will happen one year or the next. Maybe a doubling would be actually a nice thing, but what would be even better would be an opportunity to see a path forward that keeps up with inflation plus a little bit, and that we could count on, and that people could basically then flex their innovative muscles and take advantage of this amazing talent that we have in this country.
Thank you, Dr. Collins and everyone. And Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much.